Welcome to Strong Personalities. This is Yanni Bear. I am here with Mike Lohman and Ken McClelland, authors of Mastering Strongman, a training guide for 40-plus strongman athletes. Guys, thank you so much for making some time. Ken, I know you were talking earlier that you are super busy. You've had a long week. Again, I really appreciate y'all making the time for this.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So I've read the book. I like how you apply one of your principles, which is keep it simple, to the book as well, because you're very straightforward. You explain everything clearly, and then it's easy to follow for anybody to like take that as a manual to get started, and then obviously apply a lot of the terms, a lot of the templates, a lot of the strategies easily to a training program of their own. How did this come about? Because typing up a book is a big deal, especially when it comes to a sport like strongman that has, 20 different variations for 20 different lifts.
So I'll take this one. I actually have a podcast that I've been doing for a couple of years with Lee Woody called the Average Joe Strongman Show. And Ken was a guest on one of our first episodes. And after we finished recording, we were just kind of shooting the shit. And one of our mutual friends, Ken's and and Lee's too, Vaughn Sikorsky, had been telling Ken for years, man, you're so smart, you know so much, you're a great coach, you got to write a book. And Ken's like, I don't fucking know how to write a book. What? I can talk for days, but I can't fucking write. And so that was kind of the light bulb moment for me because I was a communications major in college. First 20 plus years of my career was in marketing and public relations. I've been writing my whole life. And so I called Ken up like a week later and I said, hey, were you serious? And I don't know if he thought I was serious. I'm like, hey, we could do this if you really want to do it. And that's how the conversation started. But it honestly was not my idea, nor was it Ken's. It was Vaughn's. And that's kind of how it was born.
Yep.
And Ken, how'd you feel when Mike right away was like, oh yeah, I'll help you write the book? Did you feel like foot and mouth?
I was kind of like, well, I'll be honest. There was a moment where I was like, what did I just get myself into? Because I've been coaching for 20 plus years, but I think like any great coach, I have a bit of imposter syndrome to where I'm kind of like, I know a lot of things, but I also know I don't know a lot of things. And so I'm always trying to learn and pick up new things constantly. But it's funny because I don't look at what I know. I more focus on, okay, what don't I know? And what do I need to learn more? And so for me, it was like, you really want me to write a book? He's like, yeah, man, you got a lot of good knowledge. And I was like, shit, okay, well, let's do it. So, we just pulled the trigger on it and he came down and said, he's like, oh, you just talk. Like, I'll ask questions, you just talk, and then I'll transcribe it. And I was like, okay. So he hit record and he asked me a question. And next thing I know, it was like 3.5 hours had gone by. And I've got a whiteboard and I'm drawing things and I'm like, talking. And he's like, okay, that's like 5 chapters. Like, okay, we're good for today. Let's, and then, and we just kind of kept filling things out as we went. And it was surprisingly, it's easy to talk about training. Like I could sit and talk for hours about training and about methodologies and principles and exceptions to the rules and it was fun. Like it was actually really enjoyed just sitting and it felt like just two dudes sitting around like we should have had beers.
Let's talk about imposter syndrome though for 1 second. I'm going to tell this story. We're about 3 or 4 months into this thing and we're having a conversation. It might've been as we were eating one day and Ken's like, yeah, I don't know, man. I got this imposter syndrome. I don't know if I should be writing a book. And I'm like, hang on a second, time out. I'm like, you've won national championships. You've won world championships. I've won fuck all. I mean, I've won like a couple local shows, nothing big, right? So I'm like, you take your imposter syndrome, magnify that times 1,000. And that's where mine is. I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges for me was, again, getting over the imposter syndrome. So I appreciate your humility, Ken, but come on, man, let's be real.
I know, Ken. I know, like in the book, it says that you got second to Ken. I'm sorry, to Big Z.
Yeah. I've lost the Z 3 times now. Not proud of it, but I'm one of these days, probably not, but one of these days, Z's just one of the most phenomenal. He's one of the, shit, you could argue he's the greatest of all time. And, to get a chance to compete with guys like that was the first year I was on the podium with him. I remember they didn't even announce my name on day 3. They were like, in first place, Cedric Savickas. In second place, Vitas Makaitis. In fourth place, Nick Best. And I was literally like, hey, you guys, okay, it's cool. Don't worry about it. We're fine. So, it's always been kind of like, I was kind of felt like that guy that like snuck onto the stage. Like, am I supposed to be here? But it was great. It's like, I've had so much fun, and Strongman is literally the best thing that's happened to me. So in the sports world, I shouldn't say that. There's other cool things that happen in my life, but this is, as far as sporting events, like this has been the most fun. So.
All right. So I got a quick question on the timing of this seems to be like pretty perfect, because not only is the sport of strongman like hit a big boom, I think since like 2019 when I first came in, not only when it comes to the women entering the sport, because I love that y'all make a point of like everything that's in there is for any strongman athlete. It's not just for a strongman. And then I think also though, since people overall, I feel like the athletes that enter a sport are taking better care of themselves early on, they're able to compete for longer periods of time. So I think, at least one of the things that I noticed as an MC and as a commentator is that master's class has kept growing and growing and growing and growing. So like, I think this is a perfect timing for either people that are in the master's class or people like me that are getting close to that master's class to really start thinking about that transition. So you were talking earlier before we jumped on about like a lot of the clients you have. What do those conversations look like when it comes to somebody entering that master's phase of their athletic career?
So for me, usually I talk to, because most masters have a full-time job, they have kids, a wife, they have a life that they have to take. And so usually first question I ask, like, how serious are you about this? Like, is this something fun you're just doing to enjoy? Okay, cool. Then we need to look at it in terms of what it contributes to your life as far as what it takes away, right? And then we also talk about like injuries, longevity. We talk about like their athletic history, if they have any. Like I have 2 clients right now that literally got off the couch and decided they wanted to do strongman. And I mean, literally like had never worked out before, had never really done anything. They walk in like, I want to do strongman. I was like, okay, cool. And so it's a building process. And I talk about, when I started strongman, Clint Darden once told me I was really sore. He told me, I said, how you feeling? I said, I feel like I got ran over by a bus full of Samoans. They all got out, took turns kicking me, got back in and backed over me again. And he's like, yeah, that's strongman. And so normally what I do is when I talk to clients, I talk about like, this is an incredibly brutal sport and it's hard on your body. So you need to make taking care of your body a priority, especially in the long run. And so if they're not doing those things, like Lee Woody tells a story that he in the 50 class that year? He was in the 50 class last year, not last year. And
2 years ago.
So we started doing mobility work for Lee. Never done it. Never. And he calls me about, 5 weeks, 6 weeks out from the show. And he's like, I got a problem. I'm like, what's the problem? He's like, I'm flexible now. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, I can't get, it used to be like just getting a hold of the bar created enough tension because I was so stiff. Well, now I can actually get down to the bar easily. And I was like, well, that's good. Well, no, but it's messing me up. Well, just focus on creating tension. So we talked about like creating tension and whatnot, but his lack of mobility probably impeded him in a number of events, right? Made it difficult to get down and get a stone, pick a sandbag, whatever. And he ended up doing much better than he thought he would. But like, that's part of the approach we talk about in the book is like, it's not just weight room. It's the stuff outside the weight room. It's sleep, it's recovery, it's mobility. It's, all these facets, especially as we get older. I always tell my clients, I'm like, look, we are classic cars. You don't just start a muscle car from 1975, right? Boom, throw it in drive and take off. You got to let that sucker warm up. You got to let everything kind of like get in place and like, okay, this is how we do it. And then you go. And so we talk about that in the book is about like, you can't treat this 40-plus-year-old body like you can't train like when you were 20. Like when I was 20, I walked in the weight room, threw on 400 pounds, started squatting, right? Like I didn't even I was like, fuck, I don't want to load all these plates later. I'm just going to do it right now.
And I think it's worth mentioning, sorry to cut you off, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's a hard transition for some of the people, men and women, coming out of the open division classes, right? and then they turn 40 and becoming a master's athlete. Because for the first couple of years, when you're 40, 41, 42 even, maybe you can still train the same way. But dude, 45, 46, 50, 50 plus, you cannot. You just can't. Your body changes, man. Hormone levels drop, bone density changes, all kinds of things happen to your body. So it's important for those people transitioning to the master's class to understand, hey, I got to start thinking about, again, longevity and recovering as hard as I train. Everyone prioritizes their training. Not everyone prioritizes their recovery the same way.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great point that I wanted to touch on. You jumped a little bit ahead, but I'm okay with this.
All right.
So one of the notes that I made is it's more of a mental transition that you have to get through these athletes first, so you can address a lot of the physical. And for me, like the key point that I saw from the book is you go from more is better when you're younger to less is more as you get older. Yeah. And then how hard is that to like explain to new athletes, or how hard is it to just apply to yourself in y'all's athletic career?
It's not hard to explain it. It's hard for people to embrace it.
Okay.
It's really hard, I think, for people that are used to doing, 5 heavy working sets of deadlift, right? And their deadlift is stalled and they're beat up, to say like, we're going to do 1 hard set and do 2 to 3 back off sets. And they're like, that's it? What about? I'm like, just do it. Trust me. And
listen to Yoda.
And I feel, I feel a little like, it's, I almost said something really inappropriate, but I feel like, because when I tell people, I'm like, look, just trust me, just give me a chance. Try it for a month, try it for 2 months, see what happens. And all of a sudden they're recovering more, they're getting more quality work in, right? And they start seeing improvements and they're not as beat up. Whereas, prior to that, they might have been banging away at 5 to 7 working sets on their deadlift, because that's what they did when they were 23, and they could get away with it. But shit, I used to go drink until 3 a.m, get up at 6 and train and be like, piece of cake, and then go to work. Now 2 beers and I'm like stuck in bed till 9 a.m, right? Like everything changes as we get older. And the hard part is accepting that we're not as good as we once were in terms of like recovery, elasticity of the joints. Like I've had some master strongman that I've had to take away from a push jerk and switch to a push press, because their joints couldn't take, like if they did a split jerk, their knees would hurt for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the elasticity of the joints, the elasticity of the connective tissue declines as we age. Right. And so they were like, no, this is how I've always pressed. Well, you were fucking 20 and bendy like Gumby. Yeah. You're 42 years old, dude. You can't do it anymore, right? Like, and, they talk about training age, and I think we touched on it in the book a little bit.
Yeah.
But, as time goes on, as you train more and more, I mean, I gave you that analogy about the soldiers, and Buddy said it wasn't accurate, but it's close enough.
No, that's a really good one, actually. I gave you props for the analogies in this book. Sorry, go ahead.
No. That's one thing I've always been good at, because I was told a long time ago as a coach, it's not what you know, it's what you can teach.
Yeah.
And so you got to have something, you got to have 5 different ways to say everything, so that it resonates with somebody. But that being said, like when you get older, when you're young, you can squat heavy 3 days a week. I mean, I did it in high school. It was dumb as fuck, but we did it balls heavy 3 days a week, right? Yep. And I was fine. I could play on, could go play pickup basketball or football or whatever. No problem.
You use the example of 5x10. Like 5x10 at 25 versus 5x10 at 35 versus 45, right?
Yep.
Every 10 years, right?
Yep. Every 10 years, you got to drop a set off, in my opinion, right? Like you can't do, like if I try to do 5x10 right now, it would cripple me for a week, right? But I can get away with 3x10.
5x10 heavy.
5x10 heavy, not like 5x10 at 50%. I mean like 5x10 RPE 9, grinding out the last couple reps. When I was 20, I could do that all day, right? Yeah. Like no big deal. But now that I'm almost 50, no, man. Like I actually cut back to one. So for a stretch a couple years ago, I cut back to pressing just 1 day a week. I just pressed 1 day a week, and my press shot through the roof. And I was startled, and I only cut back to 1 day a week. It was about a 6-month period. I cut back to pressing 1 day a week because of schedule. I had a nagging injury, a couple other things. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to press 1 day a week. I literally shot my press up by like 22 pounds. And my strict press, actually, that's not true. My strict press went from 320 to 360 in a period of approximately 6 months, and I've never been a great strict presser, and I'm pressing 1 day a week. I felt better. My shoulders hurt less. My elbows hurt less from cutting back the volume.
Yeah.
So at this point, I don't even press twice a week. I might press heavy 1 day a week, and the other day I come in and I do like light lat pull downs, light shoulder stuff, like just real light blood flow things and a lot of mobility. And I found that like I keep getting stronger.
Let's go back to the transition thing though. Again, I got a guy I've been training for a couple of years now, masters, 50 plus guy, and he was getting injured every like 4 to 6 months. He was just stalling on his deadlift. And for the first 2 months of me programming him, I didn't have him do any conventional deadlifts. It was pause, it was deficit, but it was lighter. And he did not want to do it. He was super resistant. And then here we are, like almost 2 years later, hasn't gotten injured. He's setting PRs like almost every time he competes. It's just like, it works, right? It's for us, for Ken and I, it's common sense, right? Same with training frequency. I had a woman who was training 5 days a week and I cut her back to 3 and now she's back to 4, but like she did not want to cut it to 3, and all of a sudden, like, again, numbers are going up. She's feeling way better and getting stronger. It's like, maybe we know something.
Yeah. So I feel like that really drives the point about less is more as we get older, especially when we have that longer athletic background that a lot of us do. Because like we said, there's a wrestling background, there's football background. There's y'all gave the examples of Eddie Hall as a swimmer, Brian Shaw as a basketball player. So one of the things that I really liked, and I want y'all to elaborate more on, is the breakdown of what strongman is versus other sports.
You mean like versus bodybuilding or powerlifting?
Correct.
Well, I mean, bodybuilders want their muscles to be in big and beautiful as possible, right? It's all about, just again, being big and sculpted, and it's the aesthetic. And powerlifters, it's 3 lifts, right? It's squat, bench, deadlift. It's that static strength on a squat, bench, or deadlift. With strongman, we don't just lift weight. We have to move with weight. I mean, yes, we overhead press and yes, we deadlift, but I mean, a farmer's walk, a yoke, a sandbag carry, a loading, whatever. I mean, like we're moving with weight. So
go ahead.
I don't know if you had.
There's so many facets to strongman in terms of you have to have endurance. You have to have, for a max distance event, for, you got to have some what I call like red line cardio capacity for a max reps in a minute for medleys, right? You do have to move with weight, but you still have to be strong because, things keep getting heavier and heavier in this sport as we go. It's we're pushing the limits of what humans can do. If you look back, 20 years ago in strongman, the weights they were doing in World's Strongest Man are at amateur nationals now, right? Like this sport is progressing fast, and I think it really is showcasing some of the amazing things the human body can do.
Yeah, I feel like strongman is like a sweet spot for the lifting world between like your CrossFitters, your Oli lifters, your power lifters, and everything. And this brings me to a definition that I'd like for y'all to elaborate about how important athletic strength is to the sport of strongman. What is it, and why is it so important?
I'll let you take this one.
Me?
Yeah, go for it, Mike.
Well, no, I mean, I guess, again, like Ken just said, I mean, we have to move with weight. So if you look at a power lifter who is pulling 500 pounds, off the floor, I mean, dude, they're strong. Male, female, I don't care. You're strong. 500 pounds, a lot of weight, right? 600 pounds, a lot of weight. 700, right? It's a lot of weight. But for a strongman, we're not just lifting 500 pounds once. We're repping that out in 60 seconds. We're picking up 250 pound, farmer's handles and having to walk 50 feet and back. We're picking up a yoke that weighs 500 pounds and going down and back. You have to have that athletic strength and be able to move with that weight, not just lift it once. I don't know if
that brings up an actually interesting story that I had. So I was at an amateur show and I saw a guy I was coaching. I had a bunch of clients in it. And there's this power lifter, and he's literally one of the best in the world. Okay. I don't know if I should say his name or not.
Don't.
You can if you want.
Dan Bell.
Okay.
It's a few years ago. Dan Bell's there. Dan Bell enters an amateur strongman contest, right? And I had a kid there, and the kid's like, fuck, that's Dan Bell. I'm like, it is Dan Bell. Yep. I'm like, but don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And he's like, okay. And the yoke was like I want to say 600 pounds. It wasn't crazy heavy.
For
I'll be
you,
honest. Okay. But
for normal people,
Dan Bell dropped that yoke at least 3 times in 50 feet. Okay. Because Dan has such a specificity of strength, right? From powerlifting that he just does this up and down, right? Squat, deadlift. We have to be strong 360 degrees. You have to be able to pick it up, carry it, move with it, stabilize, right? And walking with, like, I've had plenty of powerlifters in my gym. So I owned a gym for 20 some years. We had strong dudes. I had another guy who he's like, hey, my coach wants me to do yoke. And he's a powerlifter. I was like, all right, cool, man. Here's how you set it up. Here's how you set the height. He was a 700-pound squatter. Could not carry a 500-pound yoke. Couldn't carry it. Got it like 10 feet, dropped it. 10 feet, dropped it. 10 feet, dropped it.
Ken, how many times have you seen a guy, whether it's a powerlifter, bodybuilder, who's got like a 400 or 500-pound bench press and they can't press a 200-pound log?
Yep. I mean, I'm not saying that powerlifting can't contribute. Like, we obviously train the power lifts. You see a lot of guys use bench as accessory. But what I'm saying is there's a degree of athleticism that must be trained and inherent in a person to be successful in the sport strongman, especially nowadays. You look at the guys that are at the top of their game, the top of the game right now, right? You look at Hooper, and then I just blanked on Novikov.
Yep.
Novikov's athletic as fuck. Like, if he grew up in America, he'd be playing NFL football right now. He would not be doing strongman, right? That guy's a freak, right? And so's Hooper. Hooper's a monster, but they're athletic as all get out, right? The days of like the lumbering, can't move, can't run, they're gone, right? And it speaks to how athletic you need to be successful in this game. Not saying that you can be unathletic and not still succeed, but it really is in your favor if you have a background in sports. And you look even like Shaw, basketball, right?
Yeah.
Very athletic. Hapthor, basketball. Like, you look at these guys like Eddie Hall, swimming. Eddie Hall's a pretty good athlete, even if he'd never touched a barbell, right? Yep. And those are the guys that are excelling in this sport. Like Stoltman would be a freaking NFL tight end if he hadn't discovered stuff and been 350 plus pounds. Like, the dude's a monster athlete, right? And that's like, I do believe that is the difference between strongman and powerlifting and bodybuilding. Not that there aren't athletes in those.
Correct.
There definitely are. But it's kind of a prerequisite to be good at strongman.
Well, let me just go on the record and say this too. I get tired of the who's stronger, a bodybuilder, a powerlifter, a strongman, a CrossFitter. Like, you know what? We're all strong. Can't we just all celebrate the fact that we're strong in different ways? I mean,
we have different skill sets. Yeah, yes. We have different. Yeah, because I used to do CrossFit, where like a 500-pound deadlift would win me like the 1 rep max event at any like competition. Yeah. I get into strongman. I've gone up to 675 pounds and I'm still getting last place in strongman competitions. My first competition, I don't know if you know the guy named Papa Don. Like, he's like a big he does a lot of like funny like dancing videos and whatnot. Yeah. I went against him my first like open competition. I hit 585, which was an all-time PR at the time. He comes up to me and he's like, hey, what'd you hit? And I was like, 585. It's a new PR. He goes, oh, cool. I don't need to warm up yet. He ended up hitting 900 pounds that day. So I was like, I was strong in that pond. I am not strong in this pond on the deadlift. Yeah. But it's one of the points that you, so for the athletic strength, we're talking about like, you can't just be that static strong that you commonly see in powerlifting. It's like you have to have athleticism applied to that strength, or you're not going to, because this is, I think when Eddie Hall won it was really the peak of like the big bulking bodies just moving a lot of weight. And then even the events transitioned away from that. And like you said, a lot of the more athletic strongmen were able to be more successful with that. I got a question for you. Can you touch on the 80-20 rule? Because I think that's a really rule that a lot of athletes should apply to how they frame their training.
I don't think it's so much about framing your training. It's about like taking everything in stride. Because we talk about if you take 100 workouts in over the course of 100 days, 100 workouts, however long, 80 of those days, that's the majority, are going to be just you putting in the work. They're not going to be all that good. They're not going to be all that bad. Just 80 days, just putting in the work. They're going to be grinding it out, right? Then there are those 10 days where you're hitting PRs. Everything feels great. You're on top of the world, top 10 days. And then the other 10 are the dog shit days, the bottom 10 days. And you can't get too excited about the top 10 days, and you can't get too bummed out about the bottom 10 days because they're all going to happen. But the bulk is that 80 in the middle. So out of 100 days, 10 good, 10 really bad, and then 80 in the middle. It's about as simple as I can make it.
So real quick, Ken, the reason I was laughing, because one of my favorite parts in the book is the part that y'all talk about how the bad days keep you up at night. And the different examples that you're like, why did I let go of the farmer's handle? Like, what is wrong with me? What do you do yourself, and what do you tell your athletes how to get past that?
Well, for myself, I'm a do as I say, not as I do guy. I just stay up all night crying. No, I'm kidding.
Pint of Ben and Jerry's, box of Kleenex.
Like a pint of Ben and Jerry's. I'm in my bathrobe, rocking, No, it's I've been in the game long enough. I've been in competitive sports long enough that I try to just put it behind me. And I used to have I have a football background. And so I really honed the idea of if you have a bad play, you got to think about the next play, right? Stop thinking about that play. Start thinking about this play. And
yep.
I don't know if you watched the show Ted Lasso, but there's an episode of Ted Lasso, the be a goldfish thing, right? I fucking love that. I use that all the time now with my athletes. I'm like, look, you got to just be able to put that behind you. Tomorrow's another day, right? That one workout does not define your entire training cycle. The same way your PR day that you got up that morning for whatever reason, there's a fire in your ass and you're like, I am going to freaking destroy, you just destroy everything that day, right? Everything's amazing. Yeah. You PR, everything's off the charts. You got to put that behind you too, because chances are that's not going to happen when you come back to the gym the next time, right? You have to learn to take each day for what it is. And, the stoplight protocol, we talked about that before we started. That is the epitome of that. Hey, today sucks. I'm going to do the bare minimum, get the hell out. Today's amazing. I'm going to run with it, right? And I always tell clients, if they have a bad day and it just wasn't great, I'm like, hey, best thing you can do, spend about 20 minutes figuring out why today was bad. Why was today bad? Did you not get enough food? Did you not get enough sleep? You stressed about work? Stressed about your kids? Your kid failing a test? Your kid, whatever's going on in your head or whatever's going on in your body that if you can figure that out, maybe you can stop this from happening again. But sometimes we just have bad days and we don't know why. Right. And
so you teach them how to reverse engineer a bad day.
I try to. We try to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
And we also try to sit down and talk about, okay, why was today so good?
Yeah.
What did you do today or in the last couple of days that you think contributed to today being so awesome? One guy was like, oh, well, I sat in the sauna the other night and then I stretched in front of the TV. Shit. So you recovered better. Okay. So let's apply that.
Maybe you should try that again.
Yeah, maybe this should become more of a routine, right? Or, why did this suck so bad? Well, I was at a bachelor party all weekend. Well, probably being out drinking until 2 a.m. at 42 years old is not conducive to a good workout on Monday.
Well, at one point, Ken, you said this, and it's in the book too, is that, you learn more from a failure than you do from a victory.
100%.
Right?
100%. I agree 100%. I've had clients that, they go, or myself, that I go and I have a terrible day. And then I look back on it and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And I skipped this in warm-ups because I thought I'm short on time. What does it matter? I'll just go on to this. And everything sucks. And I'm like, okay, can't get rid of this, right? And then you apply that later. For me, there's a certain series of warm-ups that I like to do for myself. And we delve into it a little bit in the book. And I went to a contest and I did not get a chance. I just kind of lost track of time. I was coaching people and all of a sudden I was like, crap, I got to go. And I jump in and I didn't do those 2 or 3 warm-up things that are specific that I love to do. And that event sucked. And I didn't zero, but boy, it felt like I was gonna, right? For me, it was one of those okay, I need to make this a priority. I learned from that. And ever since then, no matter what, that is in my warm-up for each event at every contest since, right? And you're right. You learn more from failing. Why did you fail? Like, oh, I didn't get enough water. Well, that's very important. Like, when I won worlds, I was literally like, sweet, what did I do right? And I had to like go down this checklist, and it really didn't, like, I was like, well, I just kind of did all the stuff I should have done, and it worked out, right? Like, I gave myself the best opportunity to perform by doing these things I've learned from fucking up royally and other ones.
And speaking of learning lessons, let's just like one takeaway that anybody watching this, anybody who reads the book, don't skip your warm up. Don't do it.
Okay, so real quick on that, because I want to go circle back to a few things that that Ken was talking about here. So real quick, talk about the importance of warm-ups and what the standardized warm-up routine is, because I think that's critical for strongman, since most strongman competitions don't have the best or the most accessible warm-up stations before you go out to try to perform your best.
Yeah, some are better than others, and I'll be the first to admit that when I first started, I was guilty of like my warm-ups consisted of like, oh, if it's squat day, some light sets of squats. If it's deadlift day, some light sets of deadlift. Like that was it, and I learned my lesson the hard way with torn biceps, torn rotator cuffs, you name it. So, but no, Ken kind of helped open my eyes, and I'll let you talk. Take this one, Ken.
So for me, what I figured a long time ago was. So I remember reading this article 2 decades ago about Olympic lifters and how they approach every bar the same, right? Whether it's 10 kilos, 110 kilos, 310 kilos, right? It's the same. And it got me thinking. And then what I noticed was there was one day I just went in, I had this standardized dynamic warm-up that I used to do in high school, college, right? Like for football. And I kind of carried it over for the next like 10 years or so. When I was lifting, and what I noticed was one day I went in and I started warming up and doing this standardized warm up. And all I remember is thinking like, I feel like I should lift now, but I wasn't. I was just warming up to just loosen up that day because I was sore. So what I realized is your body is, and then I kind of delved into it more. And what I found was your body is stupid. Your body's stupid. It's like Pavlov's dog. No, but it's like Pavlov's dog, right? Yeah. The idea being the bell causes the dog to salivate. Well, the bell in this case is this simple, this warm up. And if you get into the habit of doing this warm up every time before you go train, right, your body starts to equate, when I'm doing this warm up, I'm going to lift heavy shit. Okay. And you don't necessarily have to have, after this warm up, you don't have to do you want to do reps if you can. Yeah. But you don't necessarily have to, because your body is primed. Your central nervous system, your body is like, oh crap, this is what we do before we lift, right? So it was nationals in 2016 that I actually won, which I was just as shocked as Dion was. The deadlift was 700 pounds off tires for reps. Okay, there was no warm-up equipment anywhere, so I just did my body weight warm-up and walked out basically walked out. And I think I got, don't quote me on this, but I got at least 10 reps.
Jeez.
Which for me was freaking ridiculous, right? But you combine adrenaline and getting a good warm up, my body and mind was prepped to go do this.
But that is so counterproductive for people to kind of get their heads around. Everyone's like, I got to touch the bar. I got to touch the log. I got to get a warm up. They've got to get how many warm up sets in? No, you don't. No, you don't.
So from the sounds of it, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Well, don't let me, please don't, I don't want anybody to take away that you don't need to warm up in training.
Fair enough.
You don't need to touch the bar in training. But what we're saying is in a worst case scenario,
yes,
where you have zero warm up, right? Zero equipment, zero whatever, doing a standardized warm up, the same warm up you do every time. Okay. You don't change things on meet day. Right? That's like the golden rule, right? You don't change things on the day of the comp. If you do that same warm-up, you're going to be fine, right? That's the takeaway. Find a warm-up for you. Now, that's the thing. We include a lot of stuff in the book, okay? And for me, that warm-up is certain hip mobility, certain shoulder mobilities, right? Bird dogs, a sideline glute circuit to kind of loosen and warm up my hips, right? And then basically get up and go train. Get up and go lift, right? And that's for me. And then what I do when I'm working with people is I figure out, okay, on your body, what's tight? Like what's always tight? What do you need to warm up? What do you need to loosen up? We address those. We do a little, stuff to raise your internal body temperature, to warm up those joints, to warm up things you need to do, a little activation if you need it, and then go, right?
But no matter what you do, don't skip it.
Don't skip it.
So from the sounds of it, it sounds like you want the standardized warm-up routine. And I love the pictures and the examples that you have. And it amazed me that how much of it is just with one band or a couple of different bands, and you can knock this out. And it's like the perfect warm-up where you're not completely dependent on having to touch the implement before you go out and perform. So that's what I love about it, because sometimes we get lost in like, oh, do I have my sleeves? Do I have my shoes? Do I have my belt and all that good stuff? But sometimes it's like, we got to trim the fat, get it down to what gets us going at the very beginning.
And
so that's what I love about it.
Want to do that? Of course you do. But if you can't, again, don't stress about it.
It takes the stress away. Actually, I think that's one of the things that as I was reading it and looking at all the pictures, I was like, oh, this would reduce my stress level so much, because I'm like, if I create that Pavlov reaction from getting to know that, then a lot of the stress goes away leading up to the competition, especially the bigger the competition. Like nationals last year, it was like 600 athletes. And I remember I was number 36 in the under 275. That by the time I waited in line to go up, I was already cooling down a little bit. So with that band, it's really smart and efficient way. And like you say in the book, keep it simple. Real quick, there's something term that you used earlier that I think a lot of people would benefit from, and that was the the stoplight method.
Stoplight protocol.
Say that again.
Stoplight protocol.
The stoplight protocol. Can you all expand on that a little bit?
Take it away, Ken.
Okay. So I came up with this, a few years ago when one of my clients she was working a ton of hours and her training was crap. And she kept saying like, I'm just really struggling to get through stuff. And so I said, okay, on days when it's red and it's crappy, you just do the main lift, right? You warm up because you don't skip it, right? You do the warm up and then you do your main lift. Maybe your top, what I call my driver, which is usually the second, lift in the workout, is your main accessory lift, right? And then you skip everything else. You just walk away, because you're going to get a lot of your results from that main lift. And then that's a red day. That's you have very little time, or you're very stressed and under recovered, whatever, right? Then a yellow day is when you have a moderate amount of time. You feel pretty good. Well, then you might do your next couple sets of accessories after that, right? A green day, obviously you feel great. You have a lot of time. There's no stress. It's whatever. Well, so that's the day you do your full program. And that's most days. Like it should be most days. But there's perfect world and then there's real world. Yeah. And the real world keeps you up at night. You're real with your kids crying. Your wife's pissed at you. You got to go to the grocery store or whatever, right? So those days, rather than try to cram everything in, focus your attention on the red. Put all your attention. If you get 40 minutes in the gym, 10-minute warm up, and then you're going to spend 30 minutes log pressing, focusing on a good log press, and then maybe you might hit floor press after, and then you're like, peace out. I'm not doing all this other crap today. I don't have time. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to walk away. Rather than force everything and have a crappy whole workout, you have a good portion of a workout, and the rest just falls by the wayside. And as you know, like Dan John once said, you get 80% of the results from 20% of what you do, right? And by that, I mean, if you go in and squat and then do 4 other exercises, generally you're going to get the most out of the squat, right? The rest of the stuff is just sprinkles and the icing on the cake. The cake is the squat, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell clients, like, look, if you don't have time, we're going to hit the big stuff. Beat it. Have a good day.
One of my favorite things you said in 2 years of talking with you and putting this together was no one ever lost a contest because they didn't do enough rear delt flies. Right?
True.
But
it is true. It is true.
Or might have lost the contest because they didn't do enough log pressing. Right?
Right. Exactly. And it's like, I always tell people don't major in the minors.
Yeah.
And don't neglect your big exercise. Like that's where you need to put your emphasis and your focus.
Yeah.
And that's where the stoplight protocol came from, was adapting for time and stress for this client. And then I started applying it to myself and other clients as time went on. And I've had some clients make, and ironically enough, that woman that I trained during that time actually ended up setting a bunch of PRs at the end of that because she wasn't burning herself out, wasting time doing rear delt raises.
She auto-regulated.
Not that they're a waste of time, but during that phase of her training in life, she wasn't wasting a bunch of extra energy doing that. She was only training what she could recover from and what she had time from, which was the main lifts, right? Yeah. So we focused on that.
Mike, I want to touch on something from chapter 4, goals, right? That whole chapter 4 is mostly about goals. How do you communicate to your athletes, or how do you help them pick goals for an athlete that's in their 20s, early 30s, and then your athletes that are in their master's phase? Because you give great examples in the book on like, hey, you have less time, or you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. But yeah, what do you do to help them pick the correct goals? Because that's a big one.
Yeah, I don't know that the age really factors in. I would say it has more to do with. I think it has more to do with people who come into the sport who are newer to the sport. And this is not an indictment of anybody who's young. So if anybody gets butthurt, please, I'm not coming after. But I think there's this trophy hunter mentality. People are looking at shows that they can win, and winning is like the top priority. And I'll admit, like early on, I was kind of like that. I was like, what do I have the best chance to win? And then, over time, especially for masters, you realize, you know what? It's a big victory to come out of a comp and not be hurt or any worse, for the wear, right? So staying healthy, right? Actually, number one is just always have fun, right? This is a hobby. I mean, the number of us who are actually making a living as a strongman athlete is right. So it's a hobby. So have fun. I mean, like people who do, model trains and people who, they gamble, play poker, like that, those are hobbies, right? Have fun, play softball, whatever, right? So have fun. But instead of focusing on winning, focus on, did you go into a contest and did you hit a PR or 2 or 3? Whether you finished first, second, third, fifth, 10th, right? If you go in and you hit, PRs, that's a good day, right? Yep. I had a guy a couple years ago. He went into a contest and he had never carried an 800-pound yoke. And we had, prepped him and trained him, and we knew he probably wasn't going to get the whole way down the course and back. In fact, he'd be lucky to get like 10 steps. Like, all right, you know what? We're going to get 10 steps at 800-pound yoke. And he got like 24 or 25. So that's a big day. I mean, he finished dead last, but he is still so proud of the fact that he carried that thing for 24 steps. And it's awesome, right? So look for those things, those opportunities as far as goals. Winning is fun. It's a lot of fun, right? Being on the podium is fun. But stay healthy, have fun, hit a PR, try to win an event, right? Learn something. Again, we talked earlier, failures are lessons. You make a mistake, you better learn from it so you don't do it again. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, if that kind of.
No, it is.
I will say one thing. I'm not disagreeing with Mike, but I will say when I have younger clients, I look at a lot of guys. Like I had a guy a few years ago come in and go, I want to be on World's Strongest Man. And I was like, what's your log press? He's like 250. I'm like,
you're halfway there.
I like your optimism. Let's put a pin in that goal. And I actually made a post about this, I don't know, a couple months ago. And it was when you're setting goals. So when I sit down and set goals with clients, I like to set both long-term goals and short-term goals. Now, with most of my masters, I always tell them your number one goal is stay healthy.
Yeah.
Right? No injuries. That's the number one goal with your masters is no injuries.
Yep.
But then I also talk about like, okay, so if you want a 400-pound log press, we need to set goals along the way.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just we're working toward this 400-pound goal. Let's set smaller goals. Let's set, we want to improve our rack position. That's goal number 1. And then goal number 2 is improve our leg dive. Goal number 3 is, improve your lockout, whatever. And we set goals like that. So, but with younger guys, I tend to take a longer term of goals, right? Like, okay, in a year from now, this is what we want. In 2 years, this is what we want. In 3 years, this is what we want, right? Whereas with masters, goal number 1, don't get injured. Goal number 2, 6 months from now, right? Because we're all old, right?
Are you still alive?
Yeah, like, and I also put goals in for blood work. I always say, like, okay, we want to improve your blood work. We want to look at, your liver enzymes, what's your cholesterol at there? Because the days of, like, the old stories of Dave Tate buying a pizza and pouring olive oil on it to bulk, like, no, fuck. Oh God, we want to live, right? Like, you want to see your grandkids, right? So we talk about, like, your goal might be get your fat ass out and walk for 20 minutes a day, right? Like, it's literally, the goals will change depending on if you're young or you're old, right? And then I'll be a little faster and loose with, like, I got kids that want to bulk, and I'm like, drink a gallon of whole milk a day, like, just eat Pop-Tarts and stuff yourself to try to gain weight.
Those were the days.
Yeah, right. But I won't do that with a 45-year-old, right? Yep. With a 45-year-old, it's very different about how we approach things because they have to think about their long-term health, right? Or at least I'm thinking about their long-term health because, selfishly, I want a client for 10 years.
Sure.
Versus, like, throwing a bunch of shit and drugs at some guy and saying, you'll get stronger, just take more of this and eat a bunch of this. And who fucking cares if you live to see 55, right? So I do approach it slightly differently with kids. By kids, I mean, like, in their 20s, and then guys that are in their 40s. And I also, but I think goals are if you're training without a goal, you're just hanging out in the weight room, right? It's just weightlifting masturbation. You're just you got to have a goal. You got to have something. Sorry, I'm not always very appropriate.
No, you're good. I love the honesty. I will always root for honesty. No, so that actually answered what was going to be my follow-up question on how do y'all help your athletes break down the goals based on the time frame that they have in the sport and so on. So great job on that one. Yeah. Which leads me into chapter 5, which I think is one of the most important ones because that can really get you to your goals or bury them. And this is the one where y'all talk about coaching. Y'all are both coaches. And so I have a couple of questions for you. Starting off is, like, why do master athletes need a coach if they usually have so much experience? Like, why does anybody really need a coach? You know what I mean? If there's so much information out there, like on YouTube.
I don't know a single masters athlete. I don't know a single masters athlete that on the inside doesn't feel 22.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And it's a hard. It takes an incredible. I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but it is a motherfucker to look yourself in the eye and go, dude, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You can't do 5 sets.
You can't do it.
Yeah. But if so when I tell myself, like, I can do that. Fuck that. I can still do that shit. But when my coach is like, dude, you're 45, 46, 47, 48, calm down, turbo, right? Like, you're going to blow a gasket. You're going to hurt yourself. A coach, I feel like 90% of the time what I do with athletes, especially my masters, is rein them in. No. We don't need to do that much.
Yeah.
Slow down. Nope. 5 days is too much. Nope. Yeah. You don't need to do extra workouts. Nope. Calm down. I think most of our job as a coach is giving somebody a roadmap and then making sure they follow it and don't let their pride and ego get in the way.
Yeah.
Right.
You're almost like their reality check. You're just like, hey, I understand this is where you want to be, but this is where you're actually at. There's nothing wrong with that, but this is where you're at right now.
Yep. And this is what you're capable of, right? Like, it's hard for us to understand that, like, especially some guys that have been really successful in other sports that come over to us and they're like, well, I used to be able to do this. That was 20 years ago, bro.
Well, and that's the thing. I've been doing it this way for 10 years, for 15 years. Yeah. Well, guess what? It's not going to keep working for you in another 5.
Yeah. Or how's that been working for you for the last 5?
Yeah.
Right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
I had a guy that came in and he benched 3 days a week. This is a while ago. He benched 3 days a week. His bench never went anywhere. I literally cut him back to benching 1 day a week and doing back 2 days a week. And his bench shot up 60 pounds. He went from benching 405 to 469. Okay. In a competition style.
Yep.
All I did was rein him back. We didn't do any miracle, like, set and rep scheme. We didn't do any of that. I literally was like, dude, you're doing way too much. You're not recovered. Back it off. And we backed it off, worked on some deficiencies in his strength, and not even in his chest and triceps. It wasn't any of the bench stuff, right? It was literally like upper back, some bicep, like, rear delts, things like that. Shot through the roof. And he was like, what?
I also think it's hard for a lot of people to be honest with themselves
Yeah.
Right. And so having another outside objective opinion to either watch you in person or watch video and see things that you can't see, either because you literally can't see them or you don't want to see them. You need that perspective, right? Again, the reality check.
So on top of that, I want some of y'all's feedback on this. What variables are overrated when selecting a coach?
Internet popularity, followers.
Okay.
I'm not saying there aren't some great coaches with a gajillion followers.
Yeah.
But in my experience, some of the best coaches I've met and talked to are too busy fucking coaching to post a ton on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Like Buddy Morris is literally one of the most brilliant football strength and conditioning coaches ever to walk the face of the earth. And if I had $1 for every time I'd said something like, "Oh, Buddy Morris," and they're like, "Who the fuck's Buddy Morris? What's his Instagram handle? How many followers does he have?" I'm like, "Oh my God." Right. Like, but what I'm saying is like, there are plenty of guys out there that are really brilliant that are suck at marketing. Right. And there's plenty of people out there that suck at coaching, but are brilliant at marketing. Right. And they put flashy reels out. They have 1 million followers and they produce nothing but fucking garbage.
And you said it earlier, right? It's not what you know, it's what you can teach.
Yep.
And I think, there are just some people who this is going to get me in trouble. Like, you may be a stellar athlete, but you can't teach for shit, and people look at the athletic achievements and they equate that to coaching, greatness. Athletic greatness does not equal we talk about it in the book, right? We use the example of a couple coaches in the NFL, right? And I mean, that, which is not to say, again, I'm going to backtrack, there are some great, athletes who are great coaches, but again, don't be so enamored with someone's resume to think that,
their athletic resume.
Their athletic resume. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
We talk in the book when you want to look at who they've coached and what, like, anybody can take, if they get a great athlete, and I mean a great athlete, right, and keep them great. But how do they take mediocre athletes and make them good, right? Yeah. How do they improve the majority of their clients? There are plenty of strength coaches that luck out and get one guy that's a freaking stud, right? And then everybody assumes that guy's a genius. Well, no, that dude's a freak, right? That dude is a genetic freak. He's going to be awesome no matter who trained him.
Or as it relates to masters, have they kept those guys healthy, those women healthy?
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
That's honestly, I will say that's the one thing that from my master's clients, if any of you guys are watching, I love you. Like, the greatest compliment they give me is that I haven't gotten injured. Again, this one guy, it's been 1.5 years, almost 2 years, hasn't gotten injured. I've got one woman I coached for 3-4 years, and only recently she had some shoulder issues. Not my fault. But keeping them healthy. I think so. That's something too. Like, when you're looking for a coach as a master's athlete in particular, find out who they've worked with, like Ken said, and see if you can talk to them. Reach out to them. What's the experience been like with those coaches? All
right. So on that note, what are some of the biggest red flags? So we've talked about what variables are overrated in a coach.
Sure.
What are some red flags that you want athletes out there to pay attention to? That maybe they're not aware of.
If someone writes you a program and you ask a question about why something's in there and they can't explain it, or if they say, "Just do it because I told you to do it," red flag.
If one of the first things they tell you is to do more drugs.
Yeah. Red flag.
Right. Red flag. I think on social media, if you never see them talking about specific clients or posting about specific clients, chances are they don't have a ton of clients per se. They're just pumping out flashy content, right? And just because someone puts out, how do I put this? There are people that if you look at their client list, you can go back, right? You can hit a button, you can go look at their clients, people that their photos are tagged in, go back and look and you see, well, yeah, they made a bunch of progress, but you can tell all they did was put those people on drugs, right? They convinced them to go on drugs. that's a red flag. I feel like promoting massive drug use, not being able to explain why things are in a program, not being like Mike said, and are they flexible for your needs, so to speak?
Yeah, you don't want cookie cutter programs, because I feel like that's very common when you find a coach that's strictly from social media.
And that's something that I think Ken and I both, we don't do. Like I don't have template cookie cutter programs. Neither does Ken. I mean, I talk
why
to
we're
people.
Poor. That's why we're poor.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, fair. Do that. But you want to find out what are somebody's strengths, weaknesses. What do they need help with, so that you're not just giving them something kind of off the shelf and telling them to go do it and expecting it to work. It's just not. It's not the way.
I will say, Dave Tate once told me, if the first thing a coach asks you isn't, do you have any health or injuries that we need to work around? If that's not the first thing they ask you when you start talking to them about, like, hey, I want to train with you. Okay, cool. Do you have any health issues? Do you have any injuries that I need to work around? If that's not the first thing they ask you, they're probably not a great coach.
Yeah.
Right. And especially for masters, because for me, I send a questionnaire out. That's literally the first question I ask. What are your health issues? What do I need to be aware of? Because the doctor's oath is like, do no harm or whatever. Right.
Sure.
I believe that's the same for coaches. You should not fuck your athletes up, right? Ever. It should be about making them better as an athlete, as a healthy human being, right? Like, that's the number one thing.
Well, I work at a small private gym, and I always tell people, like, look, the number one job for me in here is not to make you stronger or make you more physically fit. It's to keep you healthy. And it's no different with Strongman, right? Like, that's my number one goal, is to keep people healthy. Then it keeps them paying.
Exactly.
But
injuries
staying healthy in the long run is probably the number one indicator of progress. The number one, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't get nagging injuries, you don't get these big setbacks, you're going to make this nice long-term progress. I have a 50-year-old woman, 50-plus-year-old athlete who's hitting lifetime PRs. And she's been training she's been doing this forever.
Yeah.
But she's hitting lifetime PRs because we are attacking from a completely different angle than she did in the past. Mobility, like less is more, like we cut her training frequency back, like all this stuff. And now she's hitting lifetime PRs, at a lower body weight than she's ever been, because she needed to lose some weight.
That's a big one, especially the older you get. All right. So as we continue talking about coaches, what's the minimum amount you should give a coach to really see if y'all are working well together, or if you're not?
I say 3 months.
Okay. Why 3 months?
I feel like any program needs 12, ideally 16, so 4 months, 3 to 4 months, 12 to 16 weeks to determine the efficacy of a program. If you're with somebody for a month or two and, I'm not seeing results, give it a little more time, right?
They do say that the best program is the one you stick to, right?
Yeah, but that being said, I mean, if you've got a coach and after, a few weeks or a month or 2 months, you're not communicating or being communicated with, I mean, there could be a number of other issues, then cut bait, right? But as far as programming, I think, 12 to 16 weeks, so 3 to 4 months minimum to really. And when I bring people on, I always ask them, look, can you give me 3 to 4 months? That's minimum, right? And after 16 weeks, if you're not happy, see you later. We'll stay friends.
I agree, but I say 6 months. And the reason I say 6 months is especially if you have to make some dramatic technique adjustments, right?
Good.
The other thing I'll say is, I will say this though, my own personal experience, I signed on, this actually speaks to finding a coach. I picked a guy who was a famous athlete to coach me when I first got in. And I didn't mention his name in the book because the guy knew fuck all about training. Okay. He literally sent me pictures of a handwritten notebook once a week. And I was like, this is the program? Like, you couldn't even type it out? I was like, okay. I quit after a month when I was having to reach out to him and be like, bro, like, it's Monday at 4:30 in the afternoon. I'm going to the gym. Where's my program? And I was like, you know what? Screw this. This doesn't make any sense. Like, it literally looked like he was just writing some shit down, like while he was at the bar, and sent it to me. Right. And he was in World's Strongest Man. He was a big deal. And for me, I was just like, yeah, no, this guy doesn't need to be a coach. And that was an instance of, bailing. I picked a coach without vetting him, without talking to other people, picked him based on his athletic career. And then that was the time where I saw.
Frustrating to hear.
Yep. So. And I saw all the red flags and I was like, no, I'm out. But I like for me, especially if you have to rework some things, like if you have a terrible deadlift technique or you have terrible log technique, when you're working with a coach, if they're like, okay, we need to back it off, practice this, you got to give it time to implement. You got to give it time to pay off. So I would say at least 4 months, but up to 6. And if by 6 months you are not seeing dramatic changes in either movement quality, weights, right, health, like all these things, time to cut bait, right? Time to get out.
So speaking of, moving on from a situation or a person, the chapter that kind of like hit me in the feels is because it made me think of like the last time I played football, right? The last time I did Olympic weightlifting. I'm dreading the day where I won't be, because the gym's been part of my life since I was a kid in one way or another with sports. We talk about retirement. And for masters athletes, that's, way closer than, more years in front of us. Have you had to tell an athlete that it's time to retire?
I have not.
Oh, the silence on that one. Oh, no.
I have.
No, I have not.
I have. Well, what I have said is, so I had a couple clients that I used to work with that had a series of injuries, like reoccurring injuries from before I trained with them, right? So before they coached with me, one was a back injury and it just kept rearing its head up, and not even really from lifting stuff, just from stuff like in life. And I remember I was on the phone with a guy and I just said, look, man, like, is the juice worth the squeeze at this point? Like, is it worth the pain and the rehab and just all the stuff? Again, like, you might want to really sit down and think to yourself, is this worth it? Is it worth it? And just because you retire doesn't mean I'm getting close to, like, I can see it on the horizon, right? Like I can see it looming right there, my retirement. And for me, like, I already have plans. Like, I plan on being involved in the sport, promoting, putting on contests, going and judging, doing things to stay involved because I love the sport, right? You look at Magnus for Magnuson. Like, that dude's at big contests. He's there. He's still in the sport, but he's at both knee replaced. Like, that dude's not running a 8,000-pound yoke anytime ever again, right? Yeah. But he's still in the sport. He's still relevant in the sport. And so for me, like, that's my goal in retirement. And just because you retire from strongman or retire from competing does not mean that you can't still be involved, have fun, be part of the community, because it is an amazing community, right? You look at a guy like Vaccio, Chris Vaccio, right? Vaccio's held together with duct tape and a prayer, okay? Like, that poor guy, like, you watch him walk, it just hurts me watching him walk. But that dude's, every fucking contest you go to, there's Vaccio. You're like, holy shit, like, why are you here? He's like, why wouldn't I be here? He's a great guy and he's involved in the sport and he's around. He's, active on the boards when when you're looking on Facebook and stuff. Like, but he's not competing in any meaningful way anytime soon, right? And he's still loving the sport. He still trains. He does the best he can, but I tell people, like,
what goes back to goals, right? Have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun.
But I told him, like, look, like, sometimes competing just isn't in the cards anymore, right? If you used to compete at a higher level and you can't maintain that level and you don't want to be that guy that's like hanging on, like, that's me. Like, if I can't fight for a podium spot, like, I don't want to be that guy struggling to just make the finals, right? Like, that's just me. I'm just not that guy. If I can't compete at a high level, I would rather move on and find something else to focus on my physical training for, right? And support other people in their goals for the podium, their goals for strongman, and focus on being a really amazing coach. Like, that's what I want to do when I'm retired, is just, I'm going to throw all my effort into that. maybe I'll take up shuffleboard. I mean, I'll probably compete until the day I die. Like, I'll be honest with you. If I make it to, 70 or 80, if I make it to 70 or 80 in the nursing home, I'll be the dude out there like talking shit on the shuffleboard field, right? Like, that all you got, Abraham? Bring it. You better bring your A game. Like, that'll be me, right?
I love that the guy's name is Abraham.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think of an old name, but but for me, it's like I have had to tell people or talk to them. I'll never tell someone you're done. You need to quit. But I did ask leading questions to this guy and say, like, you tell me. You keep getting injured. It doesn't seem, no matter what we do, no matter how much rehab, prehab, core strengthening, whatever, like sometimes your body just says, I'm fucking done, right? Like, we can't do this anymore.
Well, if you ask my wife, I'm retired.
Yes.
I don't know that I can say that with 100% certainty.
I can.
Like Vaccio, thanks, buddy. Like Vaccio, though, I mean, I don't know that I have it in me to like try to qualify for OSG or to get back to nationals and try to be a top 10, podium. I don't know that I have it in me, but to go to a local show and just throw down and have some fun, like, I don't really have an ego about it. And you can say, oh, you don't have an ego because you've always sucked. Fine, whatever.
No. I wouldn't say that.
But
So yeah. I know you haven't had to have that conversation with somebody yet, but have you had that conversation with yourself, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still having it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, last year I started the year with a hip replacement. I ended the year with a hernia repair. So I'm like, I'm still just trying to get my strength back and just get to where I feel strong again. But like Ken said, I haven't told anybody that they're done. I've had conversations about when that day is coming. And again, I've got an athlete who is kind of right there with me thinking, I may not be able to compete at a high level, but I still want to be able to compete and be involved in the sport, whether it's, keeping score, judging, volunteering, whatever. It's a great sport.
Are strongman too tough for their own good?
My mom used to say there's a fine line between tough and stupid.
Yeah.
And I straddle it. Right.
We all do,
on
man.
both sides.
We all do.
I feel like most strongmen are. Right. And that's where a coach can come in and be like, dude, you're being dumb.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I had an athlete. He's not even my athlete. He's just a guy from my gym. He's a really good power lifter. I mean, like top 10, top 20 in the world kind of power lifter. He was at a contest. He was doing power stairs. Felt something go in his adductor. I told him, walk away. You're done. Like, you don't need to go anymore. No. Well, he tried to go out and do Conan's wheel. Could barely move. Right? Barely move. Then he comes over and is like, yeah, I'm done. And I was like, what the fuck? I just told you that 10 minutes ago. Like, what'd you think? Your adductor was somehow going to heal? And he did. He tore it. And, now he's coming back for his powerlifting career. But, like, we are all too tough for our own good, right? If you get into this sport itself, you're too tough for your own good. You're stupid. It's like, it is dumb.
A lot of the shit we do is
1,000 pounds on your back. It's dumb. Your body's not designed to take that shit. But we all do it. Yeah. Right? Like, I look at it.
Not all of us. Not all of us.
I haven't looked at a rock in my life that I haven't thought about. I bet I could try to pick that up.
Or go to Target and those big balls of concrete in front of Target and want to pick those things up, right?
Every strong unicorn right there.
Yeah, I can say this because I know my wife's never going to see this. But I think if I tell her that I'm going to compete again or try to compete at a high level, I mean, the next day I'm getting the papers from the attorney saying, you know what, we're done. So if I'm in it at all anymore, it's going to be just for fun.
Yeah.
So real quick, one of the things I noticed right away is who the book was dedicated to, and it said for our moms. Tell me why the book is dedicated to your moms.
Go ahead, Mike. Well, so I guess just growing up, I mean, both my parents really, were the kind of people that taught me that you can do anything, you can be anything. I grew up being taught to be honest and work hard, to do right by others, to give more than you take. And so I think my My dad was more the ass kicker, the guy that really gave me the work ethic, and my mom was more kind of the emotional support. So,
I love that. Yeah, Ken.
My mom's one of the strongest women I've ever met. Her and my grandma, and my mom taught for 30 plus years, and she inspired me to help others and to coach. Like I've been coaching now for 25 years, right? Not strongman that entire time. That's only been like the past 14. But like this has been, for me, mom showed me that like teaching others is a noble thing, like helping others. And honestly, if I won the Powerball tomorrow, I'd still coach. Like, I mean, I'd have a few less clients, but I would still coach, right? Like I would still coach. I love it. I love helping people achieve things and do things they never thought they could do. And, it's funny. I made a post the other day and I got some crap for it from a couple people, but some of my favorite clients to train aren't strongmen. They're not athletes. Like I got a 52-year-old woman that I work with that I apply a lot of the principles from the book. But at 52, she came in, she could barely lift 15-pound dumbbells. And I mean, barely, right? And she deadlifted 186 pounds the other day, which was huge, right? And then she's like pressing, none of these are impressive numbers for anybody that's watching this podcast. But for her, these were things that she never thought she could do.
I love that.
And so for me, those are the moments that like make all this bullshit worth it. All the getting up early, going to the gym, like sitting there drinking coffee, like, okay, come on, here we go. 5 more. You can do this, right? Like, that's why I get up in the morning. Like those days when that happens, or when a client sends me a video and they're super excited, like, oh my God, I hit this today. I'm like, fuck yeah, that's the point. Like that's why we do it. And my mom showed me the joy in that, teaching elementary, middle, college. Like she taught everything for the longest time. And, she always supported me in everything I did except MMA. And she wasn't a big fan of that. She just said, I don't want to watch you bleed. And sadly, I did bleed. But my point is mom set me on this path. She supported me in every athletic endeavor I ever did in high school. She made sure that I had every tool that she could afford to give me. And I know she busted her ass to make sure that I could get to a wrestling camp, that I could get to football camp, that I could do the things I needed to do. And she's always been my number one supporter. And so it was simple. Like,
there you go.
Mom, and when I told her I was like, she was so excited.
No, I love that because like similar to like what Mike was saying, where my dad is definitely was the disciplinarian. Like he's the one where the work ethic comes from. Not that my mom didn't have it, but my mom had a way of teaching, having a work ethic, and then being able to help people find their own strength within themselves, which sounds like both of y'all do through coaching, because that's a love language in itself right there, where like you're teaching all these people, like in the example that you gave, Ken, these people aren't hitting the numbers that we're used to seeing, World's Strongest Man or at OSG or any at nationals, but those are big numbers for them that they didn't know they had in them. So that's why I wanted to ask that question last about the book, because I was like, if they're the type of guys that I think they are based on what I was reading, I'm pretty sure we're going to be on the same page on that.
Well,
so
I've got a big mom tattoo right here on my arm, and it's the only tattoo. And it's the only tattoo my mom likes. The only tattoo my mom likes. Yes.
My mom. I even told my mom about that tattoo, and she's like, "No, I'll still kill you if you get a tattoo." And I was like, "All right, I hear you."
I don't have one either. I got nothing.
You got nothing? Yeah, man. I'm on the same boat as you.
Sorry, Mom.
So real quick, guys. Y'all are both coaches. One, where can people find you?
Instagram. Instagram is my number one contact right now. I'm working on putting together a website and doing some other stuff because I want to start trying to promote more educational videos, things like that, and have a central hub to link to things like this. But for right now, Instagram.
Yep.
What is your Instagram?
This is an age moment. I'm fairly certain it's Ken_E_McClelland.
That sounds about right.
Hold on.
Add me on Instagram, and I'll make sure to tag it on here.
Yeah, Ken_E_McClelland. Yes. Wow,
that's easy enough. Right, what about you, Mike?
I'm just at Big Mike Strength Coach, or at Big_Mike_Strength_Coach. So,
I love it. And then, Mike, can you let us know where we can buy this book? Because I feel like this is a wealth of knowledge for $20.
Thanks. That's amazing. Yeah, right now it's exclusively available on Starting Strongman through March 7th. And then on March 7th, you should be able to get it on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and Target.com. So right now it's only the ebook, but later in March, we will have it available in a soft cover printed edition, but still waiting to get those from the publisher, from the printer.
Well, it's because we decided to do it old school. They're actually typing with a typewriter.
Right.
Everything's typewritten. It's all typewriter.
I just see a little monkey just typing away, reading the ebook. No, it's a great book. I got it. I'll make sure to put the link in the description and everything.
Thank you very much.
I think anybody – go ahead.
I said thank you very much. I think just one last point. When this whole thing started, Ken and I – we felt there was a need. There have been books written about strongman, but there has not been a book written about strongman, how to train for the sport for masters athletes until now. Right? This is the first one in that regard, right? But I think as we started to write and we got into this process, we realized that it really is appropriate for anybody who's curious about the sport. It's not just for masters, but the whole, mastering strongman, I mean, that kind of play on words there. It's appropriate. It's certainly intended for masters, but anybody will, I think, learn and get something out of this.
Oh, 100%.
For having us.
100%. I think it's clever with the title. Two, you are targeting first like a demographic that's booming, or it's going to be booming here in the next couple of years, just because of how much longer people can actually compete in this sport and how well it's growing. Almost I would say 95% of what I read could be applied to any demographic that's competed in strongman. So I think it's a well put together. Keep it simple. Like, y'all are able to communicate everything very effectively. So y'all practice what you preach, that you know how to communicate, you know how to teach. And I can't wait to see how many people get the book. Again, I'll post a link on the description so people can go to it, because I think this is a great book for any strongman, not just master strongman. So again, the book is Mastering Strongman, training guide for a training guide for 40 plus strongman athletes. That was a tongue twister there for a second. So guys, again, thank you so much for jumping on here.
Appreciate having us.
Yeah, I really do. And I will see y'all at the next competition.
Sounds good.
See you guys.